If you pass a car accident site, don't stare. If someone tries to hitch a ride at midnight, don't just stop. Don't think that because you drive a big rig and look tough, trouble won't find you. I've kept my master's warnings in mind for over a decade. But tonight, I broke the rules. Around midnight, I encountered a family of 4 flagging me down. The moment the man saw my headlights, he dropped to his knees by the roadside and kowtowed repeatedly. Their black sedan was askew by the road, seemingly broken down, and all 4 of them looked terrified. I let them into my truck. The man, his face etched with fear, told me a strange red sports car had been chasing them on the mountain road. I told him not to worry, I was driving a heavy truck, no car would dare mess with me. Just then, the radio started broadcasting a traffic accident report. Right on this mountain road we were driving, a red sports car and a black sedan had a serious collision. The driver of the red sports car died at the scene. I immediately turned off the radio. The latter half of the accident report was cut short. The man in the passenger seat seemed terrified, his face deathly pale. How can it be such a coincidence? The car chasing us before was also a red sports car. In the back seat, the man's wife and their son and daughter were all cowering, looking at each other. This accident was 3 years ago. The broadcast was just reviewing old accident news, I said, pulling out a cigarette and offering it to the man in the passenger seat. The man finally breathed a sigh of relief, took the cigarette, and said to me, "What's your last name?" "My name is Martin, just call me Martin." "That's my wife, Rose." "My name's Leo, Leo." I nodded to Rose in the rearview mirror. Rose was holding her daughter, with her son sitting beside her. She also smiled at me. "We really owe you one this time, Leo." Martin sighed and thanked me. We were originally picking up our daughter, planning to go home together. Who knew we'd run into something like this? No matter how I think about it, it's creepy. "We really need to find a temple and pray properly when we get home," Rose added. "Is your daughter in college?" I glanced at the daughter in Rose's arms. She wasn't a little girl anymore, she looked to be around 20. Rose gently stroked her daughter's head, her face full of affection. "Yes, she's in college." "It's not a holiday right now, why is she home?" I asked again. Rose's expression froze for a moment. Her son on the other side suddenly started coughing. It wasn't an ordinary cough, it was unusually harsh and dry, accompanied by a heavy lung sound. Martin didn't turn to check on his son, but instead warned, "Mike, bear with it, don't make strange noises." The boy seemed startled and immediately stopped coughing. "Hey, no need for that. The kid's not feeling well, why make him hold it in?" I said to Martin. Martin smiled sheepishly. Suddenly, the roar of an engine approached from a distance. Martin tensed up immediately. He looked out the window, his voice changing pitch. "It's that red sports car again." It followed us. Dazzling headlights shone from behind, and a red shadow sped towards us. I carefully gripped the steering wheel. On the narrow mountain road, the roaring engine sounded like a beast gradually closing in on us. Rose stretched out her arms, pulling her frightened son and daughter into her embrace. Martin in the front seat clutched his head tightly. I looked in the rearview mirror. The sports car, already close to our tail, had its convertible top down. The driver of that car had his hands on the steering wheel, more than half of his head sticking out of the windshield, his dark mouth wide open as if howling. Is it some kind of street racer? I furrowed my brows and held my lane. This was a one-way road both up and down the mountain, definitely not a place for street racing. Piercing horn blasts echoed through the empty mountain road, and crazed shouts could be faintly heard in the biting mountain wind. The sports car driver seemed truly insane, recklessly attempting several times to squeeze into the narrow gap between my truck and the mountainside. I refused to yield, so he desperately honked his horn. The engine's roar, growing louder and louder, was like death itself swinging its scythe over our heads. At this point, Martin, huddled in the passenger seat, seemed to have become somewhat neurotic from fear, constantly muttering to himself. We were approaching a turn. I reassured the family of 4, "Don't worry." Taking advantage of the bend, I turned the steering wheel to the left, and the huge truck body swerved sharply on the road. The red shadow was instantly forced back, having to brake hard. Sparks seemed to fly from the road surface, leaving several long marks. Once we passed the turn, the red beast chasing us fell silent. It took a while for the family of 4 to calm down. Martin took the cigarette I had given him, put it to his lips, and took 2 deep drags before saying to me again, "Thank you so much, Leo. Why does it keep chasing us?" The girl, huddled in Rose's embrace, hugged her arms tightly. "We didn't even provoke it." Rose gently patted her daughter, her gaze slowly sweeping across my face in the rearview mirror, her voice dropping lower and lower. "Could it be, it's looking for a replacement? Didn't we just hear the broadcast? There was an accident on this stretch of road, and the driver of that red sports car died on the spot, right?" Rose's gaze shifted back to me. "Leo, do you know what happened afterwards? How many people died in that car crash in total?" "Mom." Before I could speak, the frightened girl hugged Rose's waist tightly. Martin turned back and glared at Rose. "Don't talk nonsense. What does it matter to you how many people died? Don't scare the kids in the middle of the night." I looked in the rearview mirror. Rose slowly lowered her head. The girl was so scared her eyes turned red. And their son, Mike, had his head resting against the car window the whole time. As the car bumped along, his forehead occasionally hit the glass, as if he couldn't feel pain. "I don't remember exactly how many people died in total," I replied to Rose. "But it seems like, besides the driver, there was also a girl in that red sports car. After the accident, she fell into a coma." The cab fell silent for a moment. On the dark mountain road, only our vehicle remained. The downhill road next to us ran along a cliff. From time to time, cypress trees growing on the cliff face jutted out their branches messily upwards. In the darkness, those menacing shadows cast on the road were always unnerving. "Miss, what's your name?" I broke the silence, my gaze shifting to the girl in Rose's arms. The girl didn't seem to expect me to ask her directly. She sat up from Rose's embrace, wanting to answer me, but then frowned and froze. "Your brother's name is Mike. What about you?" "Miss, what's your name?" I asked again. The girl slowly opened her mouth, as if about to answer, but was suddenly pulled into an embrace by Rose. "My daughter's name is Mia. Her grandpa gave her that name," Rose said with a chuckle. The girl paused, then nodded, but didn't lean back into Rose's arms. Instead, she sat by the window herself. By now, it was past midnight, and the moon had disappeared. This mountain road was very remote, we could barely see anything except by the headlights. Suddenly, "Someone!" the girl cried out. Rose and Martin both looked out the window at the same time but saw no one. Rose stroked the girl's head. "It's the middle of the night, where would anyone be?" "You saw wrong." "No." The girl insisted. "I saw it clearly, it was a girl in a floral dress, just standing by the roadside watching us." "Don't tell me it's the girl from the red sports car, right?" Mike chimed in at this moment, making Martin's face turn pale. "Both of you, stop talking nonsense." Martin loudly scolded his children, then turned to me, somewhat embarrassed. "Sorry to make a fool of myself, Leo. It's all right, encountering these things in the middle of the night, it's natural to let your imagination run wild," I said. "Leo, what kind of cargo are you hauling this late at night? Your truck seems to be driving quite lightly," Martin then asked. "There's nothing in the truck. I came into the mountains to find someone." "Find someone?" Martin looked a bit strange. "Then why drive a big truck? Isn't it inconvenient?" "Inconvenient, but it's safe." I smiled. "I've been driving big rigs for over 10 years. I'm more comfortable driving this than a small car. Leo's driving skills are clearly solid, Rose glared at Martin. Better than yours. Martin didn't say anything. Rose looked at me again and said, "Does Leo have relatives in these mountains?" "Not looking for relatives. I'm here for a client, to find her friend." Just as we were talking, a white figure suddenly appeared in the middle of the road. As the headlights flashed past, everyone in the car saw clearly, it really was a girl, wearing a long white dress, with small red floral patterns dotted on both sleeves. It was too late for me to brake, then the truck was heading straight for the girl. Fortunately, it seemed to be just a shadow, like a flickering image on a TV screen, appearing suddenly and then vanishing just as quickly. "Is it her? Is it her?" Mike cried out in panic, "Is she back?" "You shut up!" Martin roared at Mike again. Rose clung tightly to her daughter. The girl, however, was very calm, merely looking confused. "Mom, I think I heard someone call my name just now." Rose instinctively covered the girl's ears. "Don't listen, it's nothing good. No need to be nervous. It might just be the natural environment here, an accidentally recorded image," I said again to comfort them. Martin quickly said, Yes, Leo has been driving big rigs for many years, he definitely knows more about these things than we do." "Mom, I'm cold," the girl in the back seat said, shivering a little. Rose quickly unbuttoned her own coat. "Here, wear Mom's coat." The girl had just turned around when she suddenly screamed, "Mom, you're bleeding." I didn't see any blood in the rearview mirror, but the girl's expression at that moment didn't seem fake. Martin quickly turned around and grabbed the girl's arm. "Where's the blood? Your mom's clothes just have that pattern." "You child, are you scared silly?" When the girl turned to look at Rose again, Rose had already wrapped herself back in her coat. "Mom's fine, where's the blood? You're just talking nonsense. But it does seem a bit cold in this truck." I felt chilly as soon as I took off my coat too. "Let the young lady sit in the front." I spoke up, "The heater is warmer in the front. She'll warm up after a while." Rose and Martin seemed a bit hesitant at first, but they couldn't ignore the girl shivering from the cold. The girl and Martin switched places, and she seemed to feel much better instantly. The girl looked at my face curiously and suddenly smiled. "Uncle, you look like crazy." I laughed along with her. The girl was right. I was born with an unusual and intimidating appearance, and my build was also much larger and taller than average. It was a good thing this girl wasn't afraid. I handed her the thermos I had beside me. "Have something hot to drink, you'll feel better in a bit." The girl took the thermos and stared at it for a long while. The thermos I handed her was milky white, with a pink bunny drawn on it, and two handles that looked very much like rabbit ears. "Uncle, your cup is so cute." The girl caressed the two fluffy ears. "I think I have one too." "Is that so? Who gave it to you?" I asked softly. The girl frowned, seeming unable to recall for a moment. Suddenly, a hand reached over from the back seat. "Mia, Dad will open it for you." Martin snatched the thermos from the girl's hand, unscrewed the lid, and poured out a steaming cup of red date tea. "It's red date tea, my favorite." The girl hurriedly reached for it with both hands. Just then, my truck ran over something and jolted. The red date tea spilled, and droplets splashed onto Martin. The water in the thermos wasn't that hot anymore, but Martin reacted as if he'd been burned by fire, slapping at himself and screaming. The girl hastily handed the thermos back to me and helped Martin wipe the water off himself. Finally, Martin seemed a bit embarrassed and smiled at the girl. "It's all right, Mia. Don't drink it yet, this water is quite hot." My gaze met Martin's in the rearview mirror. The way Martin looked at me no longer seemed as amiable as before. Instead, an inexplicable sinister glint gradually appeared in his eyes. My truck continued to move forward. The mountain road became increasingly quiet, as if even the animals in the mountains had gone to rest. The girl, however, seemed much more energetic. She looked at me with some curiosity. "Uncle, are you looking for someone so late at night because of something urgent?" "Yes, my client is very anxious. She's very worried about her friend." "Is her friend sick?" "I guess so." I tilted my head and looked at the girl. "What about you, do you have any friends?" "I don't." The girl answered almost instinctively, but after answering, her brow furrowed again. "Mia, don't keep bothering your uncle while he's driving." Just then, Rose, who had moved behind me, suddenly leaned close to my seat back. A cold breath brushed past my ear. "Leo, please drive a little faster. Just get us out of this mountain road, and we can call a taxi home ourselves." As soon as these words fell, dazzling lights shone in from outside the car. It was that red sports car again. The familiar engine roar approached once more, but this time it wasn't behind us, but directly in front. That red sports car had somehow turned onto the downhill road. Logically, it couldn't have passed us to turn onto the downhill road first. There were no turnoffs on this entire road. But, there it was. To our right front, its headlights shining directly at our truck. I couldn't see the road ahead and was driving almost purely by instinct. Leo. Martin and the others were about to lose it from fear. The girl leaned tightly against the passenger seat back, her hands gripping the seatbelt. Just then, that red sports car actually crossed the guardrail in the middle of the two lanes. That seemingly crazed sports car driver showed no intention of slowing down. Right in front of us, he charged straight towards us. "Damn it!" I cursed. Turning the steering wheel was pointless now. I might as well just crash into it. I slammed my foot on the accelerator. Martin, Rose, and Mike all screamed consecutively. The girl in the passenger seat just squeezed her eyes shut. The moment the cars collided, the red sports car rapidly deformed, transforming from a luxury supercar into a wrecked frame in an instant. The sports car driver's howl, accompanied by the sound of a heavy impact that seemed to come from the distant past, and the gradual dying of the engine. This wrecked frame also crumbled with a roar, turning into a cloud of red smoke that enveloped the front of our truck. I held the steering wheel steady, judging the way forward through any crevice that offered a view of the road. As the red smoke gradually thinned, I thought this ordeal was over. Unexpectedly, the passenger door was silently opened. A charred man with a twisted neck leaned out most of his body from the red mist, grabbing the girl's arm and pulling her outwards. The girl was completely unprepared. If it weren't for her seatbelt, she would have been dragged out directly. In that critical moment, I pulled out the soul-striking whip wrapped around my waist, jammed the steering wheel with my leg, turned around, pulled the girl back, and using the momentum, fiercely lashed at the thing's head. A crack of the whip echoed in the air. The thing let out a mournful cry and quickly retreated into the red mist. The red smoke enveloping the front of the truck also quickly dissipated. The girl was terrified and instinctively turned around to seek comfort from her parents. But at this moment, both Martin and Rose's gazes were fixed on me. "Leo, what's that thing wrapped around your waist?" "A soul-striking whip. An old Taoist priest gave it to me when I was a child." I met those two pairs of cold eyes in the rearview mirror. I didn't expect Leo to not only be a good driver but also to have had strange encounters since childhood. Just then, Rose's cold hand slowly climbed onto my shoulder. "Our family has had a hard life, and this mountain road is difficult to travel. If Leo could stay forever and always drive for us, that would be wonderful." With a smack, I slammed the soul-striking whip onto my shoulder. Rose quickly withdrew her hand. "I see you're all pitiful people, so I'll give you a ride. Don't push your luck." The faces of the three in the back seat changed instantly. At this moment, my truck's headlights began to flicker frequently. A black sedan appeared silently, blocking my truck. My truck body suddenly sank, the accelerator wouldn't go down, the engine instantly died, and everything around us plunged into darkness. The girl in the passenger seat hadn't yet recovered from the previous shock and was now screaming repeatedly due to the sudden change. "Damn it, you ungrateful bastards!" I turned the keys several times, but the truck wouldn't start. The girl turned around crying, shouting, "Dad? Mom?" But at this moment, the back seat of the car was empty. "Uncle, what on earth is going on?" I took out my phone, and the screen lit up, casting a little light inside the car. In that car accident 3 years ago, a total of 5 people died. Besides the driver of the red sports car, there was also a family of 4 in the black sedan. The girl's expression changed instantly. You mean me, our family?" "They are not your family." I interrupted the girl. "You are not Mia." The real Mia was thrown out of the car window during the accident, fell off the cliff, and has not been found to this day. Just then, the passenger door was slammed violently. Rose's voice sounded from outside the car. "Mia, get out quickly, Mom and Dad are outside." The girl covered her mouth with both hands, her whole body trembling. "Mia, come out quickly, Mom and Dad are waiting for you." The banging on the car door grew faster and heavier. The girl didn't know what to do, curling up in her seat, not daring to make a sound. Immediately after, there was a thump on the car roof, and a dark head hung down from the windshield. Those pale eyes met the girl's directly. "Sis, stop hiding, I see you." The girl screamed, desperately trying to shrink behind the seat back. I picked up the soul-striking whip and slammed it hard against the windshield. "Get lost." Mike fell off the truck with a thud. It was quiet outside for a moment. I turned back and held the girl's shoulders, making her look me in the eyes. "Miss, you have to remember who you are yourself, you have to remember your own name. Otherwise, I can't take you back." The girl stared blankly, her eyes wide, tears welling up. "I don't know, I'm not Mia, then who am I?" Just then, distant shouts echoed from outside the car, as if someone was calling a name. The girl looked around in confusion. Who's calling? Are they calling me? I can't hear clearly." It was already 2 in the morning. I pulled out a flashlight from under the seat and got out of the car directly. The moment I got out of the car, a thick fog rose around me. That family of 4 and the black sedan were all hidden in the thick fog, disappearing from sight. My truck still wouldn't start. I took out a string of 5 Emperor's coins from my pocket. In the past, when I drove big rigs, I often performed a ritual called rushing the malevolent energy. It is a custom in the big rig driving industry. Whenever a new route opens, experienced old drivers will run it first, both to familiarize themselves with the road conditions and to eliminate risks. On a run, if the truck suddenly won't start, you use 5 Emperor's coins to tap the truck body. This was a method my master taught me. I've always carried the 5 Emperor's coins with me. When tapping with the 5 Emperor's coins, you start from the front of the truck and tap clockwise, 5 taps in each direction. The copper coin striking the truck body made a ding sound. With each tap, the thick fog around me thinned a little. I had just finished tapping the front of the truck when a bone-chilling coldness came from behind me. I'll say it again, I pity you, don't push your luck. I was born with a strong constitution and a resilient spirit. I'm not afraid of these things. If it weren't for pitying their accidental demise, sending them away directly would probably be faster. The thing behind me seemed to retreat temporarily, and the chill gradually disappeared. By the time I circled back to the front of the truck, the thick fog had dissipated. Not far ahead of me was that black sedan. That family of 3 had already gotten back into their car. Martin was gripping the steering wheel, his body charred black. He had no skin, which was why he couldn't withstand the red date tea infused with the essence of the human world. The car accident back then was horrific. The red sports car was severely deformed, and the black sedan was knocked to the edge of the cliff. Cypress trees growing from the cliff face pierced the car body, nearly impaling Mike and Rose. Both cars caught fire simultaneously. Mia was thrown off the cliff. The girl in the red sports car, Sandra, was thrown onto the highway and became the sole survivor. Martin opened his mouth, filled with thick blood, towards me. You can't escape. She must come with us. That's what she owes us. She doesn't owe anyone anything. I slowly drew out the soul-striking whip. The black sedan reversed rapidly and soon disappeared. They were, after all, wary of the soul-striking whip in my hand. But I also knew that we wouldn't be leaving this mountain road so easily tonight. I got back into the truck. This time, the engine started. The girl still sat dazed in the passenger seat, looking down at her own hands. Who am I? I'm not Mia, then who am I? I drove slowly along the mountain road. The girl didn't know that in my eyes, her body was gradually becoming transparent. Just then, the girl in the long white dress from before appeared again by the roadside. The red floral pattern on her sleeves seemed to have become more distinct. She was somewhat urgently shouting something at the girl in the truck, but the girl just couldn't hear clearly. I really wanted to help, but I couldn't reveal the truth. Revealing it might make things irreversible. The girl had to remember on her own. A thick fog gradually rose in the mountains again, obscuring the girl's figure outside the window. My truck started to jolt, as if many an obstacle had appeared on the road. Strange shadows loomed in the thick fog. Suddenly, cypress branches, dripping with fresh blood, smashed against the front of our truck. Bloody streaks were left on the windows. I gripped the steering wheel firmly, trying to keep the truck moving at a steady speed to prevent the windows from shattering due to uneven force. Immediately following, piercing howls and the sound of rolling collisions came from outside the window. It seemed as if that car accident from back then was happening all over again. Flames erupted in the thick fog ahead, and I had to slam on the brakes. The thick fog spread outwards. A blood-soaked figure lay sprawled in the middle of the road. Not far away, two deformed cars were already on fire, with contorted human bodies struggling in the flames. The girl stared intently at the person sprawled on the highway. She had the same shoulder-length hair, dyed the same reddish-brown, and wore the same style of blue sweatshirt. Is that me? It's me. In that instant, the girl's figure wavered. The next moment, she appeared in the middle of the road. I secretly thought, this is bad, and quickly got out of the car. Rose then walked out of the flames, a large hole in her abdomen, clumps of dark blood falling to the ground. That's you, Sandra. You're the one who harmed our whole family. You and your crazy boyfriend, recklessly street racing on the mountain road, you're the one who harmed us. My daughter is still missing to this day, and our family of 3 has been lingering on this mountain road for 3 years. Sandra, do you think you can live? You must stay here, this is what you owe us. The girl's form became increasingly unstable. She shook her head, trembling. She wanted to retreat and escape, but suddenly found she couldn't move. The Sandra lying on the ground had, at some point, turned into a pool of blood, clinging to the girl's feet like a shadow. The girl screamed in terror. Just then, I rushed to her side and threw the thermos in my hand to her. Think again, who exactly are you? 3 days ago, a girl named Wendy Deng found me. This girl was somewhat weak, her cheeks flushed with an unnatural redness. Uncle, please help us. My friend has been harmed. The good friend Wendy mentioned was named Violet Hang. Violet was a somewhat pitiful girl. Just after finishing her college entrance exams, her parents passed away one after another due to accidents. Her family's situation took a sharp downturn. Violet didn't even go to college and went out to work instead. Wendy met Violet at this time. They worked together and became very good friends. About a year ago, Violet rented a new apartment. I went with her when she moved. The landlady was very nice and showed Violet a lot of concern. Wendy held the cup of hot water I poured for her, her whole body trembling slightly, but I didn't expect that after renting that apartment, Violet started to change. She grew her hair long and dyed it. She never liked makeup before, but later, her bag was always full of cosmetics. She once told me she hated blue the most because her parents' work clothes were blue. But later, suddenly one day, she wore a very fashionable blue sweatshirt. I asked her why, and she said the landlady gave it to her. It was only then that I realized the landlady, knowing Violet had lost her parents, took extra special care of her. That kind of care was simply meticulous. From her clothes and hairstyle to her hobbies and social life, the auntie would inquire about and interfere with everything. Thinking of this, Wendy looked somewhat dejected. Actually, over this past year, I've long felt uncomfortable. Sometimes, when Violet stayed over at my place, that auntie would call to ask about her. She even wanted to know where we two went to play, where we went to eat. She's not Violet's mother. I wanted to remind Violet several times, but I saw that Violet seemed to enjoy this kind of relationship. I know, Violet has always missed her parents very much. Perhaps the appearance of that auntie reminded her of what it felt like to have a mother, so she was willing to listen to her. I thought about it over and over, and in the end, I didn't stop her. Wendy, at this point, was already gritting her teeth in frustration. The strange thing started happening 3 months ago. Violet's mental state suddenly deteriorated. She told me she was always having nightmares, always dreaming she was on an empty mountain road. Sometimes she was alone. Sometimes, several people were following her. At first, we both thought it was just a sleep problem. I went with her to the hospital and got some medication, but later, the medication quickly stopped working. Violet's nightmares became more and more terrifying. I asked her to stay at my place, and I stayed with her. She would always wake up startled from her dreams, screaming and shouting that they had crashed, that they had killed people. I listened with a frown. Wendy, at this point, was gripping the cup in her hand so tightly it made a sound. And that landlady, of all people, kept calling Violet, asking her to go home and stay. Violet didn't want to disappoint the auntie, so she refused to sleep at my place anymore. I originally thought that maybe with that auntie accompanying her, Violet's condition would improve. But after only a few days, Violet started having hallucinations. She would often get startled, pointing at the empty doorway and saying they were here, they had come to find her. This situation, after happening several times, scared her colleagues who worked with Violet. The company also refused to let Violet work anymore. So I could only go to her place to accompany her every day after work. Speaking of this, Wendy's tears started flowing again. Violet is really strong. She tried very hard to get better. She exercised, sunbathed, prayed to Buddha, took medicine, but no matter what she did, those things still followed her like a shadow. And I, naively, just felt that it was Violet's psychological problem. Until 5 days ago. Wendy lowered her head, her voice trembling. I was at Violet's house, and I suddenly lost consciousness. When I came to, I was straddling Violet, and I almost strangled her to death. I was shocked to hear this. I couldn't imagine how 2 young women, barely past 20, faced all that at the time. I ran away. Wendy's voice was hoarse, choked with sobs. I left Violet there alone and ran away. Wendy's words were filled with self-blame and regret. But, could she really be blamed for this? It's my fault, I'm just too timid. Wendy couldn't lift her head, large teardrops smashing onto the floor. I didn't expect that on the very day I left, Violet would cut her wrists and try to kill herself. Fortunately, a neighbor discovered Violet in time and rushed her to the hospital. When Wendy arrived at the hospital, Violet had already received treatment and her life was temporarily saved. However, she remained unconscious. Wendy returned to Violet's home to help her pack some clothes and accidentally broke Violet's mirror. It was these things. I found them in the compartment of Violet's mirror. Wendy took out a photograph, a talisman, and 2 locks of hair. The photograph wasn't of Violet, but of another girl. I searched online. This girl is named Sandra. She was in a car accident 3 years ago and has been in a coma ever since. And she is Violet's landlady's daughter. Only at this moment did Wendy realize that everything Violet had encountered was not an accident, nor her own psychological problem, but that she had been harmed by someone. When Wendy tried to find that landlady again, she couldn't find her anywhere. According to the neighbors, the auntie's daughter had recently shown signs of waking up, and the family had transferred to a hospital in another city. Desperate, Wendy posted the talisman online and unexpectedly encountered a master who was somewhat reliable. The master told her that Violet's fate had been swapped. Sandra's soul was probably trapped on that mountain road where the accident happened 3 years ago. That unfortunate family of 3 wouldn't let Sandra return until they found their own daughter. Sandra's mother, also to save her own daughter, had set her sights on Violet, who was an orphan and uncared for. This fate swapping was extremely risky. Sandra's mother had gambled her own daughter's life on it. The 7th day after Violet's suicide attempt was her last chance for her soul to return. If she couldn't remember her own name, she could only take Sandra's place and remain on that highway forever. Remembered yet? At this very moment, I was standing at the scene of that car accident. Rose and Martin's family, as well as Sandra's boyfriend, had all appeared. They stared at Violet, constantly tempting her. Violet still held the thermos I had thrown to her, her pupils trembling uncontrollably. Just then, the girl in the long white floral dress appeared once more. She shouted loudly at Violet. That distant cry, tinged with sobs, seemed to come from far away, intermittently. Finally, Violet lifted her head and looked at the girl by the roadside. Wendy? Didn't you leave? She didn't leave. She's been by your side all along. I said to Violet, look at her carefully, look carefully at her arm. At this moment, Wendy was actually on a street near the hospital. She was wearing Violet's long white dress and was calling out Violet's soul over and over again. And that white long dress originally had no red floral pattern. What stained Wendy's arm was her blood. Wendy, what happened to you? What happened to your hand? Violet saw it. She anxiously wanted to step forward, but her feet still couldn't move. Just then, Wendy rolled up her sleeves, revealing her once fair and tender arms, now densely covered with tattooed scriptures. Look, Violet, I won't be possessed anymore. I won't hurt you again. Wendy actually couldn't see Violet. She was speaking to the empty air. Come back quickly. I won't leave you again. It was my fault. Come back quickly. Wendy, why are you so foolish? It must hurt so much. Violet took a step towards Wendy. The remnant of Sandra's soul at her feet could no longer control her. At the same moment, Rose, Martin, and Sandra's boyfriend all rushed towards Violet, who was struggling to leave. I whipped forward, and 3 cracks of the whip echoed in the air. The living soul returns to its body, resentful ghosts shall not invade. I intercepted those 3 old ghosts for Violet, and Violet ran towards Wendy. However, Mike then darted out from some corner and lunged straight at Violet. Watch out! I yelled. Just as Mike was about to grab Violet, Violet touched Wendy's hand. Wendy's bloodied arm suddenly flashed with golden light. Mike screamed, his body rapidly shrinking and deforming, finally turning into dust. Violet grabbed Wendy's hand, and they disappeared together. Rose and Martin wailed and screamed simultaneously. Sandra's boyfriend had his neck snapped by an enraged Rose. He turned into red mist again and drifted away with the wind. Martin got into the car and drove the creaking black sedan straight at me. At this point, it was too late for me to get back in my truck. I decisively turned around, leaped over the guardrail, and headed for the cliff. As soon as Martin's car reached this point, it immediately lost control. I heard Martin shouting Mia in the car. This was where he had lost his daughter. I dodged Martin's impact and, turning back, subconsciously glanced down the dark cliff. Unexpectedly, a sudden chill ran down my back. A cold, heavy hand pushed me hard on the shoulder. I lost my balance and plunged straight down the mountainside. The moment I fell off the cliff, I saw the person who had just pushed me. It wasn't Rose, nor Martin, but Tom Tang. It's funny, really. Both were friends. Wendy was willing to have her arms tattooed with bloody scriptures for Violet. And my once best friend and childhood buddy, who had ruined me financially when he was alive, refused to let me go even after death. But, I'm not that easy to kill. In the chaos, I grabbed onto some weeds on the cliff face. The roots of the grass were extremely deep, slowing my descent. I quickly grabbed onto some rocks. Using protruding stones and cypress branches between the cliff face, I stabilized my body and then quickly climbed towards the road. But just as I reached the road surface, an bone-chilling cold enveloped one of my hands. It was Rose. She sneered at me, her sharp nails piercing the back of my hand. Stay and be with us. I grabbed a nearby cypress branch and fiercely stabbed it at her head. Rose let out a blood-curdling scream, and large clots of blood fell from the wound in her abdomen again. She herself had been impaled by a cypress tree. She relied on cypress trees, yet feared them the most. I flipped over and landed on the road. As the soul-striking whip cracked again, a golden light appeared on the horizon. Dawn broke. The original accident scene had vanished. Even the guardrails were neatly repaired. Only at the spot where Mia had once fallen off the cliff, a few withered bouquets of flowers remained. I think Mia probably went where she was supposed to go long ago. It was just that her family was too persistent and refused to let go. I took some paper money from the truck and burned it by the roadside. I hope those wronged souls can reach paradise soon, and I also hope such tragic car accidents will never happen again. On my way back, I received a call from Wendy. Violet had woken up. Wendy was crying uncontrollably on the phone. She said Violet didn't blame her. Violet had forgiven her. I smiled and comforted her, telling her to quickly get her bloodied arms treated properly so they wouldn't get infected again. After hanging up the phone, a familiar shadow flickered past my truck window again. He stood outside the highway guardrail, staring at me sinisterly. It was Tom Tang again. He really was a persistent ghost. I think it's time for me to deal with my issues with him too. Afterwards, Wendy told me that Violet moved after she recovered. When she saw that landlady again, the woman was so thin she was almost skin and bones. Violet returned everything the landlady had given her. The landlady just sat in her room, half dead, not saying a word no matter how Wendy yelled at her. According to that master, by using a fate-swapping technique that defied the laws of heaven, this mother wouldn't live much longer either. And it was said that her daughter, who had been in a coma for 3 years, passed away less than half an hour after waking up. All that was left for her was an exceptionally terrified face and a soul that would never find peace. Perhaps, even now, Sandra and her boyfriend are still on that mountain road, endlessly tormented by the looping car accident.